Hey, everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, a Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast. Dan Lobby and Mary Kay Cabot here with you on a Monday. It's about 1:30 when we're recording this, and Mary Kay was on the road last weekend. So we're going to get to questions from our Football Insider subscribers, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page for all of that info. But first of all, Mary Kay, you went from the owners' meetings, we're home for like a day, got on a plane, flew out to Colorado, went to Boulder for the Colorado, what did they call it? The showcase or something like that? What was essentially, go ahead.
Yeah, it was the NFL Showcase.
NFL Showcase.
But they named it too. It was the We Ain't Hard 2, with the number 2, fine, NFL Showcase.
There we go. So we're just going to call it Colorado's Pro Day as the shorthand. Look, Deion Sanders is trying to make that program a destination, and that's all part of it. So they did the Big 12 day. Nothing really happened there. They did their pro day on Friday. So you were there, and you obviously had a chance to talk to Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry. You wrote a big story on that. You got to see Shedeur Sanders throw in person. You got to see Travis Hunter run routes. You were there when Deion Sanders talked to the media and Shedeur talked to the media, all of that. What did you take away from being in Boulder for that day?
Well, I will tell you, Dan, it was such a productive trip. It wasn't easy to get there because I was flying there the day after all of those tornadoes happened across the Midwest, and flights were disrupted all over the country, really. And it was very challenging to try to get there. And so I was the only one. I know another reporter was trying to make it out there, didn't get there. And I was able to get there after my flight kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. So I booked myself on another flight, which was also delayed for 2 hours, but somehow I made it to Boulder the night before the showcase. So I was very grateful for that. And then when I got over there, it was great. It was very fun and exciting to be there. As you mentioned, anything that Deion Sanders is connected with is going to have some star power to it. Same thing with Shedeur. So to have those guys there, all 32 teams were there. The Browns obviously had an enormous contingent there. I have to go back in and even add Paul DePodesta, because as I was standing and watching the workout, all of a sudden I turned to my right and there was Paul standing there right next to me. And so they had a big, huge contingent out there. And I do probably ultimately think they will end up with one of these guys. I know there are still others in the mix, but when all is said and done, I do think it probably will come down to either Shedeur or Travis. But just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what it was like to be there, I was able to be right in the thick of it. And in fact, when I'm looking at some of the tweets and back at some of the clips, I'm looking for myself because I was right there with all of the other NFL personnel. And as I mentioned, while they were doing the throwing part of the workout, they didn't have like super crazy tight reins on where everybody was. And I was just right in there with Andrew Berry and Catherine Hickman and Paul DePodesta and Mike Borgonzi. It was kind of funny. So I was able to really see up close and personal the workout. I was able to see who was talking to whom. Andrew Berry spent a considerable amount of time talking to a bunch of different people, like Chad Brinker from the Titans. He talked to him for a while. He talked to Deion. He talked a little bit to Shedeur and to Travis. Some of these things I have on my Twitter account, and I'm actually going to be doing a sort of a sights and sounds post that I haven't been able to get to yet. Then I saw Jimmy. I happened to catch Jimmy talking to Deion. So I was lucky to get that because I was clear across the room and the field house, and I had to run over to get some video of Jimmy talking to Deion, and I caught them kind of yucking it up a little bit. And so that was kind of cool. And then afterwards, I was able to get a question into Deion. And if you look at my Twitter account, you can see that he's looking straight at me when he answers the Jimmy question, because I asked him the question. And that was kind of cool. I got that great answer out of him on Jimmy Haslam and how he really likes Jimmy and he thinks he's a cool guy. And that he also thinks either Shedeur or Travis are going to end up in Cleveland. So that's just a little bit of the flavor of what it was like to be there, but it was very cool. And you would have loved it.
Yeah, these pro days are nuts, and I've actually never been to a pro day. But just hearing people tell stories about them, and then that one in particular, just the whole Colorado Sanders family. Like I said, I think, obviously the day was about Shedeur and Travis, but I think for Deion, it was as much about like getting attention on that program and all these recruits, all these kids who are going to enter the transfer portal here in I forget when the next window opens, but it's soon for football. Hey, look what we do in Colorado for our guys. We'll get you in front of scouts. We'll get you in front of owners and GMs, and we'll make it a big production. So just that whole, I can't imagine. I'm sure Ohio State's pro day is probably crazy, and some of the bigger programs pro days are crazy. But I can't imagine there's anything like a Sanders family production.
It was amazing. And there were 160 members of the media there alone. And then I think there were like something like 71 or more credentialed members of NFL teams. Then they had fans in the stands actually. But it was really cool. And it was open enough that I had a chance to talk to whoever I needed to talk to. In fact, I got to catch up with Colorado offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur, former Browns coach, and had a really nice interview with him. I posted that this morning. As we're taping this, it's Monday. I posted that this morning on cleveland.com, and a lot of it is on video. So I took video of him talking. So I got a lot of really cool stuff, and I sort of saw who was talking to who. For a while, I saw Jimmy Haslam talking to Reggie McKenzie of the Titans. You have to wonder, like, okay, what are they talking about? You just never know what's going on in some of these situations. But this just was particularly cool because I got to see it up close and personal. And if they do end up with one of these guys, I have this frame of reference from this very cool pro day. And I'm so glad I went. Like I said, it wasn't easy to get there. And I had only been home for 40 hours after the NFL annual meeting. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot. But I'm so glad I went. I mean, you have to get from the Denver airport to Boulder, which you're going to be going to Boulder, I think, sometime soon, right?
Yeah, well, getting from the Denver airport to Denver isn't easy. So yeah, right. Boulder is a whole other trek.
Right. But Boulder is beautiful. As you know, you love Boulder. You're going to be vacationing there. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but you're going to be
It's still the plan. Still the plan.
So that'll be cool. It's absolutely beautiful. As you're driving there, you just see all the mountains. And by the time I was leaving to go to the airport on Saturday morning, the mountains were snow-capped. It snowed the night that I was there. So it was a great trip. Everybody was really nice. I have to say that Curtis Snyder, the athletic communications director in charge of football and probably in charge of everything at Colorado, he was very helpful. He was in constant communication with me as I was trying to figure out how to get there and when to get there and who I could talk to and how and everything. And he was just really good. They did a great job. They set everything up at a little press conference for us. And it wasn't one of those situations where they only talked to the TVs and not to us. They came over and they did a press conference with us. Dion did one. Shedeur did one. Now, Travis did not. He did not talk to the media that day. He does not like to do a whole bunch of media, which I think is interesting. He did, however, sign every autograph for every young kid that came up to him with a football. And I thought that was really cool. And I've got some of that on tape too. But it was just really well run. They did a really nice job. And I had way more access than I thought I was going to.
Okay, so let's get into some of these questions. Obviously, a lot of Shedeur, a lot of Travis Hunter in our questions from our subscribers. So let's just start with Jim in Zanesville making the case for Travis Hunter. Hey, Mary Kay, drafting Travis Hunter makes sense because you are getting a player that can help on both sides of the ball. No one knows for sure if Shedeur Sanders is the real deal. Hunter is. You have to pick the player that will contribute on game one. There seems to be some momentum. I mean, this ebbs and flows and has for the last few months and will continue to ebb and flow over the next 2.5 weeks. But it seems like coming out of that pro day, there is some momentum for Travis Hunter to the Browns. And I wouldn't be shocked if Andrew Berry is just completely fascinated by this kind of super two-way player who might be on the brink of doing something no one has ever done in the NFL at the level he wants to do it at.
You're right, Dan. I would not be shocked either. And as you saw from the NFL annual meetings, Andrew Berry spoke in glowing terms of Travis Hunter, almost lit up when talking about Travis Hunter because he is an anomaly. Whoever sees a guy that plays full time both ways at such an incredibly high level? So he is the Heisman Trophy winner. He's a sensational talent. And I don't think that you can go wrong if you draft Travis Hunter at number 2. I think he's going to be an amazing player. That doesn't mean, however, that I would take him there. I have stuck to my guns this whole entire time. I still firmly believe that the Browns are at number 2. They need a quarterback. They have a clear shot at one of the 2 best quarterbacks in this draft. Nothing is ever a sure thing, ever, including the quarterbacks in the first round of the draft. The hit rate for those guys is usually, generally, less than 50% as it is. But you and I have talked about this many, many times over the past couple of months. And I think we are in agreement on this for the most part. Now, once again, both of us can see the wisdom in taking Travis Hunter if you love another quarterback, and then you can get that quarterback later, and then you've got the best of all worlds. But if you truly believe that there are 2 top-notch quarterbacks in this draft that are a cut above the rest, and you have a shot at one of them, and you need a quarterback, then you need to take that quarterback at number 2. And if you believe in Shedeur Sanders and you're reasonably sure, not 100% positive, but reasonably sure that he can win football games for you and take this program to the next level, then I don't see how you can pass him up there. I just don't see how you can do it.
So the other part of this question, and I think it's an interesting discussion. I was actually asked about this recently too. Like, so the idea of Travis Hunter can come in and fix 2 positions, right? He can be a cornerback, he can be a wide receiver. I almost think you need to look at it differently. I think you need to decide, and you might not have to decide when you draft him. You have to decide maybe after you get him in your building. I think you have to decide where his primary position is and sort of look at whatever he does on the other side of the ball as, okay, that's great. That's kind of a bonus. So if you're like, he's a wide receiver, then we almost need to draft him as a wide receiver. And if he comes in and can be a shutdown corner for us part-time, that's great. But I think it's a little bit, I think you should look at Hunter more as like, what position do you prefer him at? What you get at the other position is a bonus. I don't necessarily look at it like I would take him number 2 just because I think he can help at 2 positions. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I do agree with you there. And we know from talking to Andrew Berry at the Combine that his first instinct is that they would use him primarily as a receiver. Now, he's changed his tune a little bit since then. And maybe that's because Travis has made it abundantly clear that he wants to play both ways, and both ways full-time to the extent that he can in the NFL. Never been done before, but if anyone can do it, it seems like he can. So I do think that Andrew is open to whatever. And we know also that Kevin Stefanski, even when he talked shortly after or the next day after Andrew Berry said that, he kind of went down the both ways, the 2-way street kind of deal for Travis Hunter. So I do think that that the Browns are open to him doing both, but I agree with you. I think you kind of have to pick one thing and let him really focus on it. He's going to a whole different level of football. And you might not necessarily want to heap too much on his plate early on, even though he can probably handle a lot more than maybe even we believe he can. But I think focusing on one spot and then dipping your toe into the other area as much as you can is probably prudent.
Yeah, and just thinking about how these guys spend their days, I mean, he's going to have to essentially, right, like he'll have to be in wide receiver meetings, right, or cornerback meetings, or he's not going to be able to be in both all the time. He's not, he's going to have to just even setting out how a guy's day looks. I think it's fascinating. I think I think he can certainly play both sides. But I think you need to have a clear picture of this is what we view as like your primary position. Even if you're playing 50% on defense and 75% on offense, whatever, this is what we view as your primary position. So this is kind of how we value you the most. Because also, if you're taking him number 2, you're making a long-term investment in him. If you get 3-4 years into this and it kind of comes down to like, maybe this is a little too much physically, we need to protect you a little bit, then you really do have to pick that one side of the ball a little more.
I think so. I do think so. But I think it's probably also a situation where maybe you get him into the building, maybe you get him into OTAs and rookie mini camp and mandatory mini camp, and you kind of see how it goes. Because we know this for a fact. When you get these guys and you throw them in to the pro game against the likes of Denzel Ward and Miles Garrett, and you just get to see how they are going to fare a lot better than when they are working out against their own level of competition in college. So you never really know exactly how they're going to hit and how they're going to come along. And so I think you kind of have to be open minded about it. And that is exactly what Pat Shermer said to me when I talked to him. He said, you have to be open minded about Travis Hunter and what he's able to do. And I think that's also really, really smart advice by him, because get him in there and see what he can do. If you find that he's going to be out there picking off passes for you every single week and changing the game in that way, then maybe you do have to get him on the field at cornerback a bunch, or maybe against three wides, you're getting him out there. So we'll have to see how that all goes if he ends up here. But I do think there are a number of ways to attack it.
Okay, let's move over to Shedeur with this next question. It comes from Sam in Biloxi. Hey, Mary Kay, in your most honest opinion, is Shedeur Sanders a quarterback of the future? Does he have elite qualities? Sam believes that if he does not have elite qualities, the Browns should pass. So based on where we are now, obviously you got to see him throw in person. I have not gotten to see him throw in person. I've just watched games on YouTube. So do you believe Shedeur Sanders could be a quarterback of the future type prospect?
I do. And I really do believe that he has enough traits and fast enough processing speed and good enough decision making that I do think that you can make this work with him. And no one can ever be 100% certain, like we've said before. There might be some issues with not with the deep ball, because the deep ball was actually really, really good. But there were some wobblers that were thrown out there that maybe might give you a little bit of pause. There are some things that you wonder about with him in his game where he takes a bunch of sacks. I mean, he just can't be doing that in the pros. He's not a huge individual, and he's not going to be able to absorb those kind of hits week in and week out. He was sacked the most of any quarterback in 2023 and 24 for a total of 94 sacks. Everybody talks about how tough he is, and that's great. You need a guy to be tough. He's got that. But you also need a guy to protect himself, and you need to protect him. They can't let him be getting hit a ton of times. And he's not the most mobile quarterback. So he's going to have to get that ball out quickly. You're going to have to scheme it up so that he can. You're going to have a good running game. I think that's imperative. But if you put all of those things together, then I think he can win football games for you. And when I did talk to Pat Shermer, and you have to put a lot of stock into what Pat Shermer says, because of course, not only is he Shedeur Sanders' offensive coordinator right now and has been for the past 2 seasons, but he's a long time NFL offensive coach. He knows what he's looking at. He knows how it translates to the pro game. He knows what Shedeur would be like in Kevin Stefanski's offense, because it's largely his own type of offense. And it does seem like in this particular situation that Shedeur would be running a lot of the things that we have seen Kevin go back to, his bread and butter things, like the rollouts, the bootlegs, the play action, the taking the shots downfield, and all of those kinds of things that we've seen him do. He's certainly mobile enough to run that kind of scheme. You don't have to run a 4-5 in the 40 to be able to run that scheme. We've seen quarterbacks who aren't even considered mobile at all fare very well in that Kevin Stefanski, Kyle Shanahan type of offense. So I think he's got what it takes. I was very impressed with the deep ball. And I also think, and I think this is important, I think he's got the face of a franchise capability. I think he's got all those intangibles that you need to overcome adversity, to handle what you need to handle. That's a huge part of being a quarterback in the NFL. You have to be able to handle adversity, not just play in and play out, but in the locker room, in social media, you name it, you have to be able to handle all of that. And I think he can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think my most honest answer is probably maybe, but I'm willing to find out. In the pod on Friday, I talked about the concerns I have, and it does go back to taking those sacks, right? Sometimes he takes too many sacks. Now, some of that was on their offensive line, which was not great. They didn't have much of a running game, but he got himself into a lot of trouble too. And a part of me just wonders if he felt like he had to do too much. Like, sometimes that happens. You feel like you have to kind of put that team on your back, and in the NFL, that might not be the case as much. So I don't know. I kind of come back to, like, what if he's Brock Purdy, or something close to Brock Purdy? That's a pretty good quarterback. Like, you can win games with that quarterback. Ask the 49ers about that. They're probably about to pay Brock Purdy a lot of money here soon. So, is that the perfect quarterback? Is that the guy you get in a lab and say, yeah, we're taking this guy number 2 overall? Maybe not, but I think there's enough there to take a shot on it. That's where I keep coming back to with this whole thing.
Well, the other thing, and remember, when we talked to Tommy Rees, the Browns' new offensive coordinator, and we asked him, what is the number one trait you're looking for in your next quarterback? He said, decision making. And that is what Shedeur Sanders counts as his superpower. And I asked Pat Shurmur about that, and he raved about his ability to process and make decisions. So once again, that goes a long, long way. It's why Tom Brady was Tom Brady. It's why Brock Purdy right now is Brock Purdy. You don't necessarily have to be a Lamar Jackson running quarterback to excel in today's game. Shedeur is more of a pocket passer. And I asked Kevin that too. I said, what about that? What about the fact that the trend is towards dual threat quarterbacks? And he said he can move. He's mobile enough and he can get the job done. So I thought that was interesting to hear him say that. And you can't hide from that. The fact that he's not the next whoever out of all these dual threat mobile quarterbacks. He's not the next Patrick Mahomes, although I did watch him make that nifty behind the back pass. It was right in front of me, and I was actually tweeting out another pass at that moment, and I missed taking the video of that, but NFL has it, and it was really cool. It was cool to see him do that, and it showed a little bit of moxie and personality. He did a 2-minute drill. I mean, he really put on a nice show, and I do think that we cannot underestimate all the outside stuff that goes along with being a quarterback for an NFL team.
Yeah, and he knows that, right? His dad was in an NFL locker room, all of that stuff, and with the mobility, it kind of, you're right. He's not going to be, Lamar Jackson or somebody like that, but even a guy like Baker Mayfield, right, had just enough mobility to where it's 3rd and 6, and you kind of forgot about the quarterback. Baker Mayfield would go get 7 or 8 yards, right? Like, that's the sort of stuff that Shedeur can do. So he's not going to run for 100 yards again. He's not going to break any records running the football, but when he needs to run, he can run. Like, that stuff is fine. And in this offense, they can make that work. So this is an idea that's been building a little bit of buzz recently. And this comes from Russ in Portsmouth. I'm going to take a little editorial editorial license here. I'm an English major. Editorial license here on this question, because he suggests trading up for number 1, but I just want to have the bigger discussion about this possibility. Hey, Mary Kay, what's the possibility of getting both Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders with a creative trade? Now, like I said, Russ suggests making a trade up to number 1. Some people have thought about the idea of, if Shedeur starts to slide, could the Browns jump up and get him? What are the possibilities of them getting both?
Well, I don't think that's very realistic, because I think the Titans are pretty committed to taking Cam Ward at this point. So I don't think a trade up to number 1 is very realistic. And then I think you'd have to move up to number 3 if you were going to try to get both of them. I don't think that you can take the chance of getting one of them later if that's what you were trying to do. I don't think that this is a situation where Shedeur is going to slide to 27 or something like that. I think that the Giants are just ready to pounce if the Browns don't take him. That's what I think. I think that they recognize there are two top quarterbacks in this draft, and that if Shedeur drops to them at number 3, I think they're going to pull the trigger on him there. I could be wrong, but that's just how I feel. So I don't think that they really have a realistic shot at getting both of them.
Yeah, when I see this stuff, I immediately think of the Brady Quinn year. Obviously, when Brady was just falling like crazy, and the Browns taking Joe Thomas, and they jumped and grabbed Brady Quinn, and obviously that didn't work out. I guess to me, it's like, look, if you like the guy enough, just take him at 2. Don't overthink it. And the other part of it is, okay, if he is really going to slide like that, then you're starting to say, well, we see something that no one else in the NFL sees in him. And so now we're going to trade even more assets to get him. It's just, so now you're giving up more picks to move up and take him in the first round. This comes back to something we've talked about over and over again. Just don't overcomplicate it. If you love the guy, just take him at 2. And yeah, you know what? That means missing out on an Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter or something like that. But if you believe in him that much, you're willing to miss out on that type of talent elsewhere.
Right. And this brings me back once again to Pat Shurmur. And again, he knows what he's looking at. He knows what he's talking about. And he's putting his evaluation skills and his reputation for that on the line by saying this. But he says, if you need a quarterback, you take Shedeur. If you don't need a quarterback, take Travis. And that is as simple as it gets right there. And I think that the Browns shouldn't overthink it beyond what Pat Shurmur is saying right there. They need the quarterback, take the quarterback. It's like, see quarterback, get quarterback. Why not? That's how it is in my mind. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out over the years. And I think we're going to have to keep track on which team drafts Abdul Carter, which team drafts Travis, which team drafts Shedeur. And of course, it's never apples to apples because you have to get in the right system. You have to get in the right scheme. You have to go to a team that is poised to win. But I'm very anxious to watch the careers of these players over the next 5, 6, 7 years and see how this works out.
Well, yeah, and on top of that, how much does a certain team win, right? Like with maybe Abdul Carter goes somewhere and is great, but his team never quite gets to the level that a quarterback could take you. And again, something else we've talked about a lot. Myles Garrett certainly has lived up to being the number 1 pick in 2017, but the Browns have won 1 playoff game in that span. So we'll track that too. Like again, if Shedeur is going to be good enough to run your offense and give you a chance to make the playoffs every year and maybe get hot and make a run, you'll take that over anything else. Now, I can't guarantee that's going to happen, but again, it just comes down to the quarterback is so much more important. And even just having a top half of the league guy or fringe top 10 guy just matters so much to the alternative.
Absolutely, 100%. And I have not moved off this position, even though you see the Nationals out there. A couple of weeks ago, Abdul Carter was the it pick for the Cleveland Browns. Every single one of the Nationals, you could put the talking heads all next to each other, and it was Abdul Carter, Abdul Carter, Abdul Carter. And then I don't know if it was somebody else at some point, if people did get onto the Shedeur bandwagon a little bit, but now it's Travis Hunter, Travis Hunter, Travis Hunter, Travis Hunter. They're all saying the same thing. So I don't know exactly the way this is going to go yet, but I still think that if you have a clear shot at one of the best 2 quarterbacks in this draft, you take it and you see where it gets you. And if it doesn't work out the way that you hope that it does, then you try again. But you have to take these swings at the plate for a quarterback because that is what is going to transform your franchise. And I have not also moved off my position that I believe they should take 2. I think there are enough very intriguing prospects in this draft that when you have 10 picks, you need to take a second quarterback, fill up that room with some options and see what you can get. And look what happened and you know that I was very big on the Browns drafting Joe Milton last year in a later round. I put my money where my mouth was on that. I put it in one of my mocks, and I really believed they should do that. And they could have gotten a draft pick out of that, like New England did. So I do firmly believe that they should take another one. And there are some really good ones. I still really like Tyler Shook. I don't know where they could possibly get him. Probably not too late. So that's probably not going to be very realistic. But that's the second quarterback that I would add to this football team if I could in any way. But there are others that are intriguing. I think Jalen Milroe is intriguing, although there's talk now that he's going to go in the first round. I don't know if that'll happen. And then another one that I had heard a lot about, and I saw you put it in your mock draft, is Kyle McCord. Early on in this process, I had someone really talking up Kyle McCord to me just about how good he's going to be in the pros. So that's one that I'm very intrigued about as well. So I just think that you still have to go with two of them. I would much rather have a second quarterback than a safety in like the fifth round or something like that.
Yeah, well, and they have a bunch of sixth round picks, so they can move around on that third day to get who they want, and like, there's just so many things they can do. And again, I mean, the Joe Milton thing is instructive. They had drafted Drake May; he was going to be their franchise quarterback. They take Joe Milton, and they get a fifth round pick for him based off of one game against Buffalo's second stringers. Like, it really can be that simple sometimes. So I don't think that would be a bad idea either. I'm on board with you on that. Still not on board with your taking two in the first round, but again, we like bold ideas here. We're all about bold ideas. So, okay, let's talk one more quarterback here. This comes from Mike Parker in Chester, Maryland. Hey, Mary Kay, is Kirk Cousins off the table? Is there a scenario in which the Browns could acquire him? If the Browns select Travis Hunter and then Travion Henderson, they would immediately upgrade their offense with Cousins at quarterback, and they would still be able to draft a developmental quarterback using draft capital.
It's a great question. And while we were at the NFL annual meeting, Kirk Cousins was the it quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. All of the Nationals were on the bandwagon at that point that the Browns were taking Abdul Carter at number 2 and that they were trading for Kirk Cousins. So is that still a possibility? Is that still out there? You can't rule anything out at this point, but I still think that that's a little bit of a long shot. I still think it's a little bit unlikely because there are, and I've written this, because there are so many variables. You have to satisfy 3 different entities. You have to satisfy the Cleveland Browns. You have to satisfy the Falcons, and you have to satisfy Kirk Cousins with a number of different things that have to all gel together and come together financially and otherwise, and opportunity wise, and things like that. So at this point, I'm going to stick with what I have been saying, that I do think that that is unlikely at this point in time.
Yeah, I think if we get through Thursday, so if we get through the Thursday night of the draft and they don't pick a quarterback, then it's probably time to maybe get on Kirk Cousins' watch a little bit. Although it sort of depends who's left. I mean, let's say Jackson Dart's still out there or someone else is still out there. Maybe they'd pair that guy with Kenny Pickett. But that's sort of when you get on Kirk Cousins' watch. But again, it comes back to, do you want to trade draft capital for a guy who's going to be 37 when the season starts? Or do you just want to take a guy at 2 and see what happens? I don't know that your ceiling changes necessarily with either guy. Maybe Kirk wins you a few more games, but I mean, you're not going to win the Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. So that's what I keep coming back to with Kirk as well, is I understand the connection, and I understand why the Browns might talk themselves into that. But at this point, if you've got to trade assets to get him and take on that contract, you don't even get the offsets. Like if Atlanta would have just cut him, you don't get to do what the Steelers did with Russell Wilson. It just becomes so much more complicated. And I just wonder why that's a better path than, again, just take a guy and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many reasons that it might not work out. And the other thing is that you'd have to hope that he was the Kirk Cousins that showed up in the first half of the season against the Falcons, and not the one that finished out the season by going 1-4 with 1 touchdown against 9 interceptions. He fell off the cliff. And a lot of that was because he had a shoulder injury and he ran out of gas on the Achilles recovery. But I just have to wonder if that is a wise decision for the Cleveland Browns to do that. And at this point, I really don't see it. And the other thing is, if you are going to draft Shedeur Sanders, then that takes Kirk Cousins out of the mix. He's not going to come here if you draft Shedeur at number 2 overall or wherever you get him with your first pick. So I think that's something to keep in mind. That's probably not going to happen. It's not going to happen if they draft him. And I still think that they do need to draft him. So I'm sort of off the Kirk scent at this point.
Yeah, again, it was fun. I mean, again, it's just one of those things that you're right. It was coming out of the owners' meetings. Well, maybe they'll go get Kirk, or maybe it's like, I don't know, whatever. This is just ever changing. What everyone on the outside kind of thinks the Browns are going to do. But the Kirk Cousins thing probably isn't going to go away until they either draft somebody or there's resolution there. And the reality is, Kirk can kind of play this out. If he doesn't want to come here because he thinks a rookie might take his job, he could wait, as you pointed out. Somebody will get hurt in August, or even early in the season, somebody might get hurt. And now, hey, there's an opportunity for Kirk to go play, and maybe an opportunity for the Falcons to even get a better pick. So this thing might play out a little longer than people think if the Browns don't just go get him.
Right. And I have written this a number of times and I've stated it a number of times. And that is that Kirk Cousins is not waiving that no trade clause until after the draft. Now, I don't know if he would do it after the first night of the draft. Maybe he does it somewhere on draft weekend, but he's not doing it until after the first round of the draft, day 1 of the draft on April 24th, because he is not going to go somewhere where they just drafted their quarterback of the future who they are going to plug in right away. It doesn't matter which team it is. That's not going to be happening for him. I actually think that at this point, I could see them wait. I could see him wanting to wait until a team needs a starting quarterback, until a quarterback goes down with perhaps a season-ending injury or a half-season injury or something like that. And then he knows he's going to go there to start.
Okay, those questions came from our Football Insider subscribers, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner on the top of the page for that. A couple of things that I keep telling you about that I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe to or follow. Our Twitter account is Orange Brown Talk. And then we put these, most of our pods up on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com if you want to watch them. Also, we went live for our draft pod last week on our YouTube channel. We're going to go live for our draft pod again this week. We're going to try and do probably some Hey MKs live. Trying to do some more live stuff with the pod. So get subscribed. Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com is the YouTube channel. That'll do it for this edition of the podcast. Mary Kay, I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great.